The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, the executive committee of the party there, accusing the judges of reportedly being biased against the former president, Jacob Zuma. Now, the party says judges are taking sides in political battles. Let's get into this conversation and speak to the party's secretary in that province of KwaZulu-Natal, Mdumiseni Ntuli, who joins us now via the virtual platform. Mr. Ntuli, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, can you confirm if indeed the PEC document that is being reported on, the contents of that particular document, the media has been reporting on it quite extensively. Is this indeed an authentic document that the media is reporting about?
Well, good morning, Xoli, and good morning to the viewers at home. Xoli, firstly, we had a meeting a few weeks ago with the national officials of the ANC, in which we discussed a number of issues facing the ANC in general and the challenges that are making it difficult for the movement to achieve the agenda of social transformation in our country. And among those discussions, of course, was about the transformation of the judiciary. It had nothing to do with the judiciary being used or discharging its responsibilities in a manner that is against former President Zuma. Somebody has unfortunately decided to leak not the document itself, but they've actually leaked the discussions to the media, because in our document you will not find anything that talks about the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal having a view or a position that the judiciary is in any way targeting former President Zuma. But you'll find a broader reflection about the challenges in the judiciary, in the economy, the task of the ANC renewal, and what we thought and we think as a province are the urgent tasks that must be undertaken by the national leadership of our movement.
Yeah, okay. So, in essence, what you are telling us is that the ANC, at the time of massive unrest in the country, because this discussion, understandably, it took place in July, right in the middle of that unrest that we saw. You're saying that this was a discussion on the judiciary and the economy in general. So are you saying that this had nothing to do with the insurrection that had gone on in the country at that time in July?
Well, no, it really was not a meeting convened purely to discuss the unrest that had taken place in the province, some parts of the province and Gauteng. It was a long-standing meeting of the provincial executive committee of the ANC with our national officials. You remember that a few weeks before the unrest, we had an opportunity to have a discussion with the president of the ANC, Comrade Ramaphosa, on a variety of issues, among which those are that I've just mentioned now. And the president made an undertaking that within a space of 30 days, he will come back with the national officials of the ANC so that we can take further the conversation we had with him. So it was just a coincidence that the time at which the national officials were available to come back to the province also was immediately after the unrest that has taken place. It was not in the middle of it. It was a week later, if not 2 weeks after that unrest which had taken place. And then the national officials said, well, we might as well use this opportunity to analyze the environment in the province and the situation following the unrest that had taken place.
Yeah.
So the discussion was in that context. It was not necessarily about what had happened last week or 2 weeks before. It was about a number of issues that we had wanted to discuss with our national officials as early as 2019.
So, Mr. Ntuli, I want to be perfectly clear here, not just for myself, but for the viewers as well. You're saying that at no point, and there is no document of the ANC PEC in KwaZulu-Natal suggesting that the judges at the Constitutional Court had basically created a quote-unquote Zuma law when they decided to send him to prison for contempt of court.
The discussion with the national officials, among others, included the observation which the PEC was making that certainly the situation, for instance, if you want me to come to the JZ issue, the situation around the case of former President, the case of contempt by former President Zuma is unprecedented. It's a new situation in the country. And it's a matter that we were saying as a provincial leadership, we must learn in terms of its consequences and its implications to our jurisprudence going forward. And we were also, and I think later on, somehow the Concord was also proving us correctly. We were saying that we are also worried about what appears to be a tragedy in the country, within and outside the movement, that people are becoming oversensitive when you raise anything critical or some criticism about the work of our judiciary system. And we're saying to the national leadership, that cannot be consistent with the task of the National Liberation Movement. In fact, judges themselves, including one of our leading jurists, the late leading jurist of our country, the first black Chief Justice of our country, made a very compelling argument in 1998 about the need for the judges and the judiciary to understand that they cannot be insulated from criticism. And for them to be away from criticism, it's important that they must discharge their responsibilities in a manner that is consistent with the expectations of our people.
Yeah.
So the discussion in the meeting was about that. It was not about the JZ issue. The JZ issue might have been an example, but there are many other examples that we were putting across on the table. Of course, the media decided to choose the example about JZ. For instance, we said something about, you see, when the court in Pietermaritzburg in 2015 made a decision that the ANC does not have a right to convene an early conference unless it is sanctioned through the processes of branches. And the PEC, as the highest authority in the province, and the NEC, as the highest authority of the ANC in the country, does not have authority to make that determination. We were saying all of those things, we should have learned something about them, because they have implications not only to the ANC, but also in terms of our jurisprudence as a country.
All right.
The strategy that we're embarking on. But I think the media chose only to look at the issues around former President Zuma, obviously, because he's currently incarcerated.
In the interest of time, Mr. Ntuli, I'm going to rush us along because there are other matters that I'd like to bring in on the table here. But it's simply too coincidental that this meeting, which was convened to discuss the judiciary and the economy, just so happens to also include in it the matter of the former president being sent to jail by the judges. But I'm going to take your word for now. But there is one clarification I also seek from you, and that is it the view of the KZN ANC that the judiciary of this country favors the Ramaphosa-led administration versus that of his predecessor, Jacob Zuma?
No. That's certainly not the view of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. In fact, let me give you the context within which that matter was discussed, and the president himself commented on that issue. The context was that over a period of time, maybe in the last 5 years of the President Zuma's leadership in government, we had many problems, both in the ANC and government, and clearly the ANC and government were very unprepared in terms of how to deal with the litigation that were going on, as a consequence of which many judgments and decisions were against either the ANC or the government. Yeah. And the president intervened in that conversation and said, even today, the situation has not improved, which we agree with him. The situation has not improved. We still have many litigations for and against government and the ANC, in which we are emerging as defeated either as a movement and or as government, on the basis that we lack absolute preparation that is required in order for you to go to court and win cases. So there was no way in which the PEC would say under President Ramaphosa, the judiciary is favoring him, or under President Zuma, the judiciary was against him. But we were saying a new situation has arisen over the past few years, including the last years of President Zuma's tenure in office. Yeah. That both the ANC and government have been found wanting in terms of how to respond to the challenges of the law in our country. And that was the context. And of course, what went out in the media, as I'm saying to you, was that we were comparing President Zuma and President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're never doing that.
All right. So let's then quickly move into the characterization of what happened last month. When I spoke to you in July, post that unrest, you used the word exaggerated when the characterization of what had happened had been labeled by the president as a failed insurrection. You've since had time to reflect as the leadership of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal on this matter. And what is the PEC's view about what happened last month? You still contend that it is an exaggeration to say what happened last month was a failed insurrection?
That is a political perspective. It's not a question of whether you agree or disagree with anybody. It's a political perspective that the ANC in the province adopted, which was submitted to the national officials, and we had an opportunity to engage with the national officials. Just that I'm not at liberty to reveal to you what then became the conclusion or the understanding between ourselves and the national officials on that perspective. But it's a political perspective. We are yet to put it before the National Executive Committee when it convenes in an ordinary meeting. Because it's not a question of whether we agree or disagree with what our president said as a head of state when he said the country is facing an attempted insurrection. It's a political perspective in terms of how the movement, over a period of time and going to the future, must analyze the cause and the effects and define phenomena for what they are.
It's a political perspective, Mr. Ntuli, and I'm sorry to cut in because of time. Yeah. It's a political perspective that seems to not be in step with what has been told to the public by law enforcement agencies in this country, that what happened was actually a work of coordination by some, even including in the governing party, whose attempt was to see to it that this administration is overthrown somehow.
Tony, that's why I'm saying the ANC is not led by law enforcement agencies. It's a national liberation movement which has a responsibility properly and in a proper context to characterize phenomena, events, and developments that are taking place in the country. So it can't be led by state agencies. That discussion, as I'm saying to you, is yet to take place in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And once the NEC had decided that this was this or that, there need to be a final discussion. But you can't say because the police have gone out and said, we don't disagree with the fact that it may very well be that there are people even within the ANC who were attempting to do, who were leading this counter-revolutionary agenda that we saw in the country. We don't disagree with that. It may very well be that the police know that those people are within the ANC. We don't know, and we hope that at some point they're going to be arrested. The issue that we are raising is that we are not going to be led by the police or the intelligence to characterize phenomenon and developments in our country. It has never been like that. It will not be like that. The ANC has to interpret conditions and give meaning to what it has understood to be taking place in the country.
Mr. Ntuli, I'm going to have to ask you that we disagree on this matter, because the ANC has no investigative capacity to characterize this by itself and separate it from the very state that is governed by it. Law enforcement agencies have the capacity to investigate such matters. But let's leave that there for the moment. I'd like to come to the issue of your health MEC in that province.
Yes.
She held a birthday party, we understand, and it was a nice time, a very nice time, no masks in sight, and only later does she apologize for not wearing a mask, as opposed to being in a gathering in a province that right now is seeing an exponential rise in infections. Are you, as the deployees of your cadres in government, going to ask that Sihle Zikalala put her on leave, or perhaps even takes her out of government?
When this happened, Xoli, it was at the time when we were seized with the registration. So it was only yesterday that myself and the provincial chair, who's also the premier of the province, had a brief discussion on the matter. We are meeting later today because I understand that the Premier has requested the report, which was submitted on Monday, if not yesterday. And of course, he would have to take certain decisions in terms of how to deal with the public conduct. I mean, what happened in the party, which involved one of our senior leaders in government, an MEC of health. We can't really condone what happened there. It was absolutely wrong. The gathering no, I'm saying that the gathering itself was not necessarily a prohibited gathering, but the conduct, what happened within that gathering, was absolutely wrong. And I think the Premier, in consultation with the ANC, will make whatever decision that would be in the best interest of the government and the party in terms of dealing with that situation.
So when can the public expect a decision then?
Well, I don't know, because it's the Premier who must then make that decision. I'm saying, for my part, as provincial secretary of the ANC, I would be having a conversation with him later today after the cabinet meeting, because I have not had an opportunity to meet with him since I've been seized with the registration until early hours of the morning yesterday. So we're meeting today. I will get a sense of what the MEC has submitted as a report, and of course what the Premier thinks is an appropriate course of action on the matter.
ANC KZN Secretary Mdumiseni Ntuli, thank you very much for your time.